Hi and welcome to STAR. Today we're going to talk about writing for translation. So there's a few tips we can give you that will help you design better brochures, websites and software. So one of the most important things, we'll start with the simple thing, is that the text in translation will typically expand. For example, in German as a language is typically 15% longer than English. So when you design a brochure and you have your text laid out, you should be aware that that text will actually grow during the translation process. So to make it easier, it's actually better to design white space around your document. So always have lots of white space. Give you an example. The word of cancel in German is abbrechen. So obviously you can see it's quite a long word. So if you have designed a software UI where you've got this text there or button, it's going to actually be much longer. And it can happen very often in quite a number of sentences. So that's probably the primary thing to remember in translation. The other thing that's also noticed is that fonts can also change size as well. So a very simple case, a W is actually larger than an I. So in certain scaled fonts, it's actually wider. So what can happen is that when you've designed a text which looks nice, that when you translate it, because you're using different letters, the actual text, the string length will actually change. So that means then that your layout can also change. So if you've got pictures or images lined around things, it can actually move the document around. So if you can take this into consideration when you're designing your documents or your websites, it makes it a lot easier to translate. Thirdly, one of the things, it's probably a bit more subtle, this third point will be that sometimes a message can actually change during translation, so the text actually might change. So if you look at the McDonald's example where they use the phrase, I'm loving it, in Chinese that doesn't really carry across because love is a very sensitive word in the Chinese culture and it would only be said between very special people. That wouldn't be used publicly, for example. So what they did in translating that, they translated it to a Chinese term which literally means I like it. So it's a different sentence. So sometimes your taglines or your straplines will actually be different when it comes to the translated version. So it's worthwhile, if you are designing a new brochure, to run your new straplines or taglines past your translation company before you finish your brochure, so that you can get their input on it, so that they might be able to give you some advice in terms of maybe changing the text, modifying the text for the local market. And that process would be called transcreation, which is another service that STAR offer. Finally, one of the things, and it's one that you can run into trouble quite often with, is the use of abbreviations. Abbreviations should be used very sparingly, especially around technical documents. And if you do use them, you should always use the full explanation of the term first and then the abbreviations initially, so that way when someone's reading a document they know what it is. Like, it's very simple. People will take terms and we will banter them about and use them in common everyday language, and we'll assume that everybody understands them. But for example, in Ireland and UK you have VAT, tax, so it's VAT, but in France that is TVA. So different word, different meaning. So sometimes it's difficult to translate terms if we don't have the full meaning. Now obviously VAT and TVA will be very common, but if you have specific terms that you're using in your industry and you use abbreviations, it's useful to give your translation agency the full explanation of all of the terms, so we can use the correct and appropriate term for you. So that's about it. So a little bit of care and attention can make your translation better and the process a lot easier for you. Thank you very much.